Hello, my name is Lisa Spencer. I'm the Communications Manager for Nakurmiik Disabilities Makiinaswaktiit Society, or NDMS. We are an Inuit-based organization out of Iqaluit, Nunavut. We started as a grassroots organization and have been incorporated since 2005 with a vision and mission for full independence, choice, participation, and self-determination of all Nunavummiut with disabilities. This particular year, in 2023, we are hosting an asynchronous conference for National Accessibility Week. National Accessibility Week is taking place from May 28th to June 3rd, and it's looking to celebrate the valuable leadership and contributions of Canadians with disabilities. We're looking to highlight the work of people and organizations and communities to reduce the barriers for people living with disabilities and to reflect on the ongoing efforts to achieve full accessibility. So today I have Vicky Levack. Vicky is a disability rights advocate based out of Nova Scotia. She is a survival of institutionalization and she is living in the community now. Vicky would like to highlight the recent Court of Appeal decision regarding housing discrimination for people with disabilities. And you can look in the notes section of this video for a link to the Disability Rights Coalition for further information. Hello, Vicky.
Hi, just to clear up, it's not housing discrimination, it's discrimination in access to social assistance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Just wanted to, no, that's fine. I just wanted to clear that up.
Absolutely.
But yeah. DRC, Nova Scotia Disability Rights Coalition website will have all the details on that. Granted, I'm gonna warn you right now, it's a little dry, but I think it's important to read. Sorry. Anyway, thank you for having me.
Okay. So for our focus for this particular conference is looking at disability across the lifespan.
Yeah.
And your website kind of caught our attention with your recent advocacy efforts, especially in Nova Scotia, and your interest in housing. So I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your experiences thus far.
Well, I grew up kind of really normal life. I was middle class in suburbia, so housing was never really an issue when I was a child. I just wasn't my folks and did the kid thing. Now there was discrimination against me in the school system. We had to fight every year for me to get NEA. It's like we had to prove I still needed it. Now with my disability, I have cerebral palsy. That is not something that gets better over time. It just is what it is. So it's not going to get any better, but it's also not going to get any worse. So for me to have to prove every year, and really when I was smaller, for my family to have to prove every year that I still needed those supports was kind of ridiculous. And when I got a service dog in high school, when I got a service dog in high school, they were not going to allow me to have my service dog in the school. They said, no, it's distracting to the other students, was what they said. So my dad, being my dad, said, well, you're breaking the law, and if you don't let her in the school with the dog, I will have every news crew in the entire province at the school, and I will get a team of disabled children and their parents, and we will walk the school, and nobody will get in. I'll also bring the police and my daughter's service dog trainer. So there were, oh, sorry. Yeah, she can come to school with her dog. Which was my right. So we shouldn't have to do that, but we didn't actually have to do that, but we did have to threaten to do that, which was kind of cool. I thought my dad was a little bit of a badass after that. So yeah, there were definitely some discrimination. Plus, being a disabled child in school, I didn't really get picked on for being disabled, but I did get picked on for being different. It wasn't really the wheelchair thing. It was, I also have a learning disorder. So the kids saw me as weird, or I spoke differently than they did. And I didn't really understand social stuff. To be honest, I still don't. Um, I found my fellow weirdos, and now everything is good. But yeah, there were definitely some of that. With the good old ableist comments that are made, and they think they're being nice, but they're not. We had a neighbor who told my mother that he saw me going up into the street in my wheelchair, and he thought, and I quote, "Thank God that's not me." So yeah, basic ableism like that. Very hurtful. But because we were financially not well off, but we had enough. My dad was in the military, so we had really good insurance. I was able to get the things I need. But when you're no longer a child, you lose a lot of those supports. I view it as like puppies, right? Like babies and puppies are cute, so you want to help them, and then but when they grow up, they're no longer cute. So there's not oh, we have to help them because they're cute and innocent and stuff. It's like, oh, you're grown up, you're no longer cute. Now you're just an issue. That's how I felt. A lot of the supports I had just no longer existed. I didn't have as much access because there weren't enough access points for adults for the same things. And granted, like adults need different things than children, but we still require some of the same supports. And but we can't get them because we're not kids anymore, and they sort of you just fall off a cliff. So when I turned 18, I tried going to university because I got in gay, and but I couldn't get the amount of support I needed. I was part of what they call the self-managed care program, which is where they give you a pot of money and say, okay, go handle things. I was 18. You basically have to run a business. I was 18 and mentally ill at the time, and was told, here, 18-year-old, go run a business. Now they said, we'll help you. That didn't happen. And I just, yeah. So, and you only got a set number of hours. I forget the number, but I required 24-hour care. We didn't know this at the time. We thought I could manage. I could not. I got sick. I almost died. Due to mental illness and a bunch of other surgical complications, whatever. But so I moved back home after getting help for my mental illness and other things. And then went back to my parents' house, gave me a safe place to land. So, but then we were like, where's Vicky gonna go? So I toured when I was in the hospital. I toured a small options home. And I was like, this is great, I love it. But then they asked me, can you transfer yourself? I said, no. Can you dress yourself? I said, no. And blah, 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 blah. And so I said no to all those things. And they said, oh, then you can't come here. We don't, it's only for people with intellectual disabilities. We don't have the supports for you. So I went back home, got a visit for a social worker who basically told me I had two options: move in a nursing home after my parents died, or move into a nursing home now. Those were my options. So I said, okay, well, I guess I'll move into one now. because I want to be there to have. I want out of my parents' home because at this point I'm like 20. Like, who wants to live with their folks at 20? Like, nobody. Plus, like, we lived in a very small town. There were no job opportunities, no public transit. So I was relying on my parents for everything. They were my primary caregivers. We did have VLN coming into the home, but quite often they would cancel my appointments. So we all felt trapped in the house. And I lost my parents, like, as parents, and they became my caregivers. Um, so I toured a nursing home. They filled my head with a bunch of lies that it was gonna be. They described it to me like a dorm room. They said it would be like living in a dorm room. And 21-year-old me being stupid, I believed them. Because like who would lie about that? And then I moved in, and it wasn't a dorm room. Let me freaking tell you. And I was like, what have I done with my life? I don't want to be here. And I asked my mom, can I come home? And she said, look, you absolutely can, but you have no life here and you know that. At least in the nursing home, you get what you need and you're in the city and you can build yourself a life. So treat it like a hotel, a really, really messed up hotel, but a hotel. So that's what I did, and that's how I survived. And then in 2020, maybe 2019, I got a call from a lawyer who was Claire McNeil, who is the lawyer for the DRC human rights case. Apparently, she got a call from my father, who said, you know, my daughter's in the same boat as your clients. Can you help her? So she called me and said, hello, would you like to get out of there? And I said, that's an option. I didn't even know that was an option, okay? Like, I knew what they were doing was morally reprehensible, but I didn't know it was legally wrong. And this was during COVID, like the height of COVID, actually. And I was like, I'm trapped, and they won't let me leave. Like, I wasn't even allowed to go for a walk unless I contacted Dr. Strang directly and got his permission. It's not like he had anything better to do. Dr. Strang was our chief health officer, or whatever they call it. Chief. He made the COVID rules. Okay, so I said I can get out of there. She's like, yeah, technically they're breaking the law, and I'm like, oh, they're breaking the law. Well, then they should stop doing that. And you know, it's and yeah. So I said okay, and she helped get me out because we reapplied for the DSP program, which I applied for before. I got rejected because I was too disabled, whatever that means. And then they told her, my lawyer, that oh, she won't get rejected again. So we applied again, and I applied. She helped me fill out the paperwork because paperwork is hard, and especially for government stuff. And I got rejected again for being too disabled. And then we learned about what they call the shared services pilot, which was the brainchild of Jim Pally, who is now my roommate. And said you either put her on this program or we sue you for $20 million for kidnapping, pain, and suffering. And they're like, oh, please don't sue us, because they knew I'd probably win, and because I had documented everything, because of course I did. Whenever dealing with government, get everything on paper. So they're like, oh, please don't sue us. Here, we'll put you in the program. So that's how I got in. And now with this ruling, it says, okay, what we did for Vicky, meaning tailoring supports to her needs, and what we did for the other 3 participants who live in this program as well, with this program, they now have to do similar things maybe not exactly these supports because everybody needs different supports depending on their needs. But we have to give them the support they need in the community and no more institutionalization because girls. So that's basically what it says. And then as I was being institutionalized, I thought it was just a mistake, like somebody made a horrible mistake. And then I looked around me and I said, wait a minute, we're screwing everybody over. This isn't a mistake. This is how the system works. And I'm like, well, then the system is messed up. And we got to fix that. And then during COVID, of course, here in Nova Scotia and indeed across the country, we had a housing crisis. On August 18th, our local place, there was a homeless camp at what we call the old library on our one of our main streets. The police came, were very violent towards the unhoused. When people tried to step in to stop them from destroying shelters, the police became violent with the protesters. I saw this on TikTok and on other social media sites. And I was like, oh, that's messed up. So I went to one of the camps and said, what do you need? Because I was just going to get like supplies and go to Walmart and come back and drop it off. And oh, never mind. And they said, what we really need are bodies. We need people to be here to stop police violence, or at least witness if they like videotape it if they witness it, so that we have proof. And I was like, oh, I got nothing better to do. So I worked there for a year until it shut down. I didn't work there in the winter, like on the ground, because my body couldn't handle it, but I did do social media outreach. But every day I could be there, I was there 13 hours a day, just trying to keep things running. Because a lot of the volunteers had day jobs that like they had to go to work. I work for myself, so I can just be like, hey, I don't want to go work today. So yeah, so I did that, and then I realized 70% of people on social assistance, which isn't enough money to live on, by the way. It was not in this province. I don't know about other provinces. 70% on the social assistance have disabilities themselves of some type. So I was like, oh, so it's poverty and disability are connected. You know, it just did bit. So like, yeah, and a lot of people who are homeless also have disabilities, either mental illness, which I do consider a disability, or physical ailments, or things like that. So that's how I became involved in the unhoused community, because I saw that crap, and I was like, when did I wake up in Russia? You know, this isn't how we do things in Nova Scotia. We're supposed to help each other. So, and that's how I became a police abolitionist. But yeah, so started there. I got some media attention for the camp because they needed media because they had people going, "Yeah, they're violent, like scary homeless people," and I was like, "No, these people just want to live, like they're trying to survive, leave them alone." So that's how I sort of became known for working in the homelessness sector, which is the fact that it is a sector kind of grosses me out. We shouldn't need it, but here we are. And then it just sort of snowballed from there. I got asked by the National Right to Housing group to be their East Coast representative. I was like, cool, thank you very much. And now, yeah, I just do what I can to help anybody who needs it. And so that's what I do now. And with this case, I mean, the next 5 years for me and for the rest of the people in the DRC, as well as the government, are going to be very busy. because we have to get 800 people out of institutions in the next 5 years. God helps. We can do it, but it's going to be a lot of work. So that's my 5-year plan. And then after that, I don't know.
I think that sounds fantastic and definitely ambitious. There's a lot to unpack there, Vicky. Thank you.
I know.
That's
I'm sorry. It's a lot. It's a lot. I realize.
No, I truly appreciate it. There's a few things that definitely were more salient to me. First and foremost, you mentioned the DSP program. Can you explain what that is?
Oh, the Disability Services Program.
Okay.
No, Disability Supports, rather. Sorry, Disability Supports. Too many acronyms. Disability Supports Program. And the way it's run right now, it's very, and the way it has run up until this ruling is, it's very narrow. Like, they try to fit you into their programs. Instead of giving you what you need, they're trying to force you in a little box and say, where do you fit? Well, I didn't fit anywhere. And so did a lot of other people. So a lot of other people got left behind without any support. Also, the wait list. Like, some people have been on the wait list for 20 years. Like, the hell? So with this ruling as well, there has to be no more wait list, and help has to be immediate. Does that mean they give you a house right away? No, of course not. But it means that they give you access to a coordinator to start building a plan right away. And the plan will be tailored to you and your needs, instead of trying to fit you in a box.
Well, if it's rolled out in the way that they're promising, I think that would be extremely beneficial.
Oh, I know. Yes, I'm very excited about it.
You mentioned paperwork is hard. I think that is
paperwork sucks.
Absolutely. That's an ongoing thing that we're finding as well, is that there's difficulty in accessing funds, difficulty in accessing medical care, difficulty in accessing housing and various support programs because of that paperwork barrier. As somebody from NDMS and working with Nunavummiut, a big thing that we have noticed is that taxes is an important part of all of these application forms. And you have to be up to date on those taxes, and you have to fill out paperwork in a way that is appropriate or deemed,
correct,
the right way to do it. So do you think that there is an alternative to this constant need for paperwork?
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends on if you have a disorder or a disability that is not going to change, like me, like my diagnosis will never change. It will never improve, but it will never get worse. It'll stay the same until the day I freaking die. So I should only have to fill out paperwork proving I'm disabled once.
Yeah, it would be nice if all of those different support programs were tied to one filing of paperwork as well.
Exactly. And like, there should be like, here's the Vicky file. And if you want to access supports, well, here's my file number. Go look at it. Instead of having to fill out the same information and tell the same story over and over and over and over till you're blue in the face.
Now, how is that for your mental health?
Yeah, it sucks. It sucks very hard. And like, it's like, yeah, let's re-traumatize her so that she can earn the right to support. But we have to re-traumatize her first.
Earn, yeah, that's a big, that's a big word. When we think about rights and for people with disabilities, there should not be a need to earn anything.
Oh, of course not. Of course not.
Rights are inherent.
That's not how this works. At least not right now.
We call them benefits.
I mean, it should, but like, yeah. And we call them benefits, like they're gonna benefit you. Like, and the government is not in the access of providing support. Government, it seems like, and it feels like to a lot of people, I share this view, that they're more in the business of denying support like, and saying no rather than saying yes.
Yeah, that reminds me of what you had mentioned when you were looking around in your institution with everyone else there, that everyone is screwed over, that the system is designed to screw people over.
Yeah.
And that's something we're finding as well when we talk to people with disabilities, is that they're not just advocating for themselves, they're advocating for the entire group.
Yeah, it's funny, you know, like I got out of the institution and everybody well, not everybody, but a lot of people were like, yay, you can retire and go do something else now. And I'm like, no, I can't. No, I can't. There's 800 people behind me. I still got some freaking work to do. Like, I'm like, have you met me? Do I seem like the type of person to be like, well, I got what I needed, so screw the rest of you? Like, no, that would make me a terrible person, and I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. I don't know how anybody could.
And what about your access to healthcare, Vicky? How is that?
My access to healthcare is actually pretty good. I was looking up that my doctor from the institution kept me on as a patient when I moved to community, so I'm very lucky to have a family doctor. That being said, there are certain types of care that are hard for me to access, like gynecological care. Very difficult. Sexual health care, very difficult. And it's because I'm disabled. Like, you know, they say, oh, we have this chair for gynecological exams or people with disabilities, yay. But then I go there and it doesn't work. Like, it's broken all the time. And in order for me to get a pap smear, because of the way my legs work, they had to like knock me out, like put me under. I was told when I went to get a pap smear before we realized we would have to put me under, that I didn't need a pap smear if I only had one partner, because it was impossible for me to get diseases if you only have one partner, which is untrue. And this was a nurse that told me that. She then asked me how many sexual partners I had. When I told her the number over my lifetime, she looked at me like I was a whore. And you could tell she was not impressed with me at all. I had to explain to her before that why I was even there, because she didn't understand why I would need, you know, gynecological care in the first place. And I was like, because I'm a woman who has parts that need, you know, that kind of care. And I had to explain that I was sexually active and that it was by choice, and that, you know, that I wasn't being forced by other people, which was her automatic assumption. And so that part is still very hard. And I would also have a hard time accessing mental health care if my dad wasn't well off. We are upper middle class now. So he has money. We're not rich by any means. We are well off and comfortable. And my dad pays for my mental health care privately. If I had to access the public system, I would probably be dead right now. And I am fully aware of that. Because our mental health care system in this province, and from what I understand in many other provinces, if you don't have money, it's trash. Like, and actually doesn't care about people, and then again about saying no rather than saying yes. And even if you do say yes, you have to wait years, and some people don't have that time. A lot of people, when they get to the point where they need to access those supports, they don't have 2 years to wait. They need help now.
Would it be accurate to say that with the inclusion of the supports and services, that the wraparound services that you need as a disabled person, would that help in your mental health?
Oh, I can tell you right now, it already has. I am off my anxiety meds. from living here, because I was with a bunch of people who didn't always know what they were doing, so they would hurt me through no fault of their own. But I did get hurt. I have been punched. I have been kicked. I have been joked, and I have been scratched. And again, I don't blame those people because they weren't aware of their actions.
Dementia.
But it did happen, and it was scary. And I didn't have the sports I need. I wasn't allowed to leave my home during COVID, and if you can go on nursing home for 1.5 years. I was not able to leave my house for 1.5 years. Could not step outside. And at the in the summer when COVID hit, the first summer, all I wanted to do was sit in our little garden backyard and read a book. I didn't want to go anywhere because it's COVID. But I said, I will wear a mask and I want to sit in the backyard and read my book. And they said, no, you can't do that. And I said, why? And the lady looked at me and she said, because, quote, I'm not making this up, someone could jump the fence and give you COVID, close quote. So I thought, well, that's ridiculous. So I called the CBC and said, hello, I'm being held against my will. Like, they won't even let me go outside. Please help me. And because I don't know who else they're doing this to, and I can't be the only one. And then all of a sudden, they heard that I was calling the CBC, and you could hear somebody's heels. And the same lady who said, jump the fence, give you COVID, ran in my room and said, do whatever you want. And I was allowed to sit in the backyard after that. But if I had not had contacts at CBC to expose them, I don't know what I would have done.
It's certainly not a big ask.
No, sit in the back, like, even, like, okay, I wasn't asking to go to freaking Disney World. I was like, let me in the backyard read a book. And I mean, other people were allowed to do that. You weren't allowed to leave your property, but you were allowed to sit in your own backyard or sit outside. In fact, they encouraged you to sit outside. And I wasn't allowed to do that until I exposed them to CBC. By the way, God bless the CBC. They've helped me a lot. Proper journalism is important, and we need to fund it and keep it strong. But that's a side tangent. But I think
That's a whole other conversation, but yes, I understand. Your conversations about increased surveillance and added security measures around COVID and how it might lead to isolation. Can you talk about your experiences of isolation before and after COVID? Is there a difference?
Before COVID, I wasn't really isolated because I was lucky enough that I had the abilities to go out on my own. So I didn't need someone to go with me. It would have helped, but I didn't need it. I could manage. And I had no problem asking strangers for help. Some people may feel uncomfortable with that. I've had to do that my entire life, so it didn't really faze me. So if I was at a store and I wanted something, I'd be like, excuse me, random human, would you mind, help me out with this? And that's fine. So I wasn't really isolated that way before because I was able to find community, which I didn't have any help with, by the way. I thought that's what social workers were supposed to help you with. And she said, quote, that's not my job. And I was like, okay. So me and my mom cobbled things together. And then once mom taught me, I was able to do it on my own. But my mom was basically my social worker until very recently when I actually got a good one. And now I have 2 social workers, one through Disability Sports, which is community services, and then one through Department of Health. And they're both lovely, and I love them, and they're great, and they'll help you with whatever the hell you need. Which I'm very lucky because not every social worker is like that. Most of the social workers I've had especially when in the institution, were terrible and hated their jobs and hated their clients. And belittled us at every opportunity. One person who was my social worker told I would tell the other residents about their rights as citizens because they didn't even know they had rights. And I was like, no, you have rights. Like, here they are. And then she told them not to listen to me because I didn't know what I was talking about. And I was like, oh, okay, it's on. Anyway, I got her fired. It's don't mess with me, man. And don't mess with the people I consider part of my community. Because I don't want to like ruin your career or whatever. Like, I'm not that vendetta type of person. But if you're doing something wrong, I will end it in whatever way it has to be ended.
It's self-preservation, right?
Yeah, and she's gone now. And it's good. I hope whoever they got to replace her is better. I mean, I do want to go back to check on this, but there's so much trauma associated with that nursing home that I can't step in there and be mentally well. I can't.
I
They
think
asked me,
that's very fair.
the nurses asked me, you know, are you gonna come back and visit? And I straight up told them no. I said, I love you guys. Like, the people on the ground were great. My day-to-day staff, most of them were great. There was one or two, but there's one in every job. But I said, you can come see me, but I can't come back. I can't come back. Like, I'd have to take drugs and no, like, seriously, I'd have to take drugs to be able to survive going back, and I'm not gonna do that to myself. So you can come see me. My door's always open, but I can't come back.
You mentioned community as a means to accessibility. Can you expand on that thought?
Well, I mean, people are social beings. We are a society. We're supposed to be a collective. If you're isolated from the large group, you don't have access to the supports or the services or, you know, even the human connections that other people have. And by meeting other people, you leads you to more opportunities. Like, the more people you know, the more opportunities you will have. Both for like work, but also for like social fun time. And activities that you just like. You know, community was very important to me. And when I lost that for a year and a half, I'll admit it, I became suicidal again. I had them put me on suicide watch. I went to them and said, I've just had some really dark thoughts. Like, watch me like a goddamn hawk, you know? And all they did was check on me every 10 minutes. They didn't get me any support. They're like, you still alive? Okay, good. But they didn't sit and have anyone talk to me. They didn't, you know, say, let's look at your meds. They didn't say any of that. And they still left like knives and murder and shit. Can I say shit? I don't know. And I said, no, don't let me drop things because I will use them to hurt myself. And they didn't care apparently. Luckily I didn't use them. I was strong enough to like be like, no. But I'm scared of that. I was very scared of that. Because I didn't trust myself. And even when I go and say, help me, I don't trust myself. Nobody did anything. My parents did, but the people in the nursing home did not.
So that's an interesting point, and kind of lends itself to our discussion about disability across the lifespan, is that your needs were met when you had parental guardians to advocate on your behalf.
Or friends, or myself, yeah.
Right.
Other people. But the people in the nursing home, the ones who had the power to help, didn't do a damn thing.
That's unfortunate. How has transportation changed for you? Have you been able to
Well,
access?
transportation in Halifax is a little sus. Like, we have an accessible bus and it's a good service, but you have to book a week ahead. And we do have accessible cabs now. We've had them for almost 2 years, I want to say, on a consistent basis. And but it's expensive to take cabs over. And I'm lucky because I'm able to supplement my income because through the government, I only get for like transportation, I get $60 a month. That's all I get. Like, and a bus pass is like, or no, I get 150, pardon me, 150 a month. I misquoted that number. But a bus pass is $84. And the bus isn't always reliable because, again, you get a book we had. So then you have to take a cab and stuff. And I do have a van, but that van costs, $150 to fill. It's very expensive. So I only use the van if I want to go outside the city because you can't get wheelchair accessible transportation outside of the city limits. You can't. So I only use it for, like, if I have to go give speeches somewhere else in Nova Scotia, or if I want to go, like, I plan on going on like beach trips in the summer or whatever, I will use it for that. But yeah. But yeah, transportation leaves a lot to be desired in this province. Like, outside of HRM, we basically have nothing for people in wheelchairs.
And
Or with other disability needs.
it requires a lot of planning too. Like you
Oh,
mentioned,
yeah, my life is very planned.
which
My life is planned.
Yeah, which can add to, I think, not only the mental health difficulties, but also the discussions around poverty, the interconnection with poverty that you had mentioned before.
Yeah, like I said, I'm lucky I can supplement because I am able to work, but I also have to worry about how much money I'm making because if I make too much, it'll fall back my support. Like, it's all nuts. It's nuts. And just the stress of money because of all the rules can cause a mental health condition, I think, in itself.
Just would like to touch back on your discussion about sexuality and gynecological care. I think is an important piece to mention because oftentimes we assume that people with disabilities are not sexually active.
Yes, we do.
And now I noticed that that's also listed in your website as an interest of yours. Did you want to expand on that as well?
Well, specifically because we are told that people with disabilities, not upright, but we are basically taught we don't have one. It's not part of our lives. And I'm like, you can be asexual and disabled. Absolutely, 2% of the world is asexual. It is a totally valid choice. And if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But just because you have a disability does not mean you're asexual. There's no correlation between those two things. 98% of the world is sexual in some way. Either with themselves or with other people. So yeah, we're just humans. It's denying a part of our humanness. And if you don't see me as a full human, that's degrading, like, and hurtful, And because I wasn't taught in school anyway, sexuality with a disability lens, what we were taught in school was don't have sex or you'll get pregnant and die, was basically our sex education. We didn't learn anything about LGBTQ. We didn't learn anything about, like, sexual violence. We had one movie one time about intimate partner violence, but it wasn't about, like, it was like the dude hit his girlfriend, but it didn't, but that's all it showed it as. It's like he's beating her. Like, and there are many other forms of abuse. I am a victim of my mother was my birth mother was emotionally abusive, which even though she's not intimate partner, that does apparently classify as violence, interpersonal violence. So violence doesn't mean he hits you, he or she hits you or whatever. It doesn't mean they have to physically touch you. You know, being called an idiot from the time you're 8 is abusive. They don't have to hit. They don't have to hit you to be abusive. And we weren't taught that. I was taught that at home, but we were not taught that at school. Same thing with sexuality. I didn't learn anything about sexuality with the disability ones except from my stepmom. And when you're 14, you don't want to listen to your stepmom about doing the sex attack. So, it's, you know, I like to think, I know at least with LGBTQ stuff that's changing in schools. I don't know if it's changing with disabilities. I would like to find that out. If somebody has stats on that, please send them to me. But yeah, I think it's part of your humanity, and it's not dirty and bad. And I mean, we just have to get over that with everybody, regardless of ability. It's not dirty. It's not bad. It's just a thing that we, as adults, or sometimes even, you know, teenagers, do because it feels good, and we are sexual beings, and it's not good or bad. It's just that thing.
And a lot of the barriers that people with disabilities face is attitudes from the disabled community and even within the disability community as well.
Yeah, it's I haven't seen it in the disability community. I'm not saying it's not there. I'm just saying I have been lucky enough to never encounter it, or hear about it in any way, but definitely within the non-disabled community. When I'm on a dating site, one of the first questions I get asked is, "Can you F word?" And I'm like, "Hello to you too." Like, some of them don't even say their name. They're just like, "Can you do the thing?" And I'm like, "I can, but not with you because you just said that." Like, you know, and that's just a level of ignorance, and we need to combat that. All this is ignorance, and ignorance does not mean stupidity. Some people conflate the two. Ignorance means I simply don't know. And that's what the problem with these people who say these things, disability or not, simply do not know what they don't know.
All the more reason why it's important to have events such as National Accessibility Week.
Exactly.
So this is a great segue into more of the positives. Have you seen some hopeful elements in the federal legislation in accessibility standards or in the UN?
Well, I'm worried about the accessibility standards look good, but I'm worried about how they're being enforced. But on paper and the way they're stated, they're good. I'm worried about enforcement and how do we enforce that. The Disability Canada disability benefit is a really good thing because, like I said, like we just discussed, disability and poverty are linked, and this isn't going to make people, you know, rich by any means. It's going to bring people, the way it's designed is to bring people slightly above the poverty line, so they're not going to be eating lobster every night, but they aren't going to have to choose between their meds and their groceries.
That's been a recent hot button issue as well, as the link between disability and poverty might increase the likelihood of people accessing medical assistance and dying.
Yes, yeah, and in fact, it's not might, it already has. It's happening right now. MAID in Nova Scotia has jumped 11% within the last year. And I don't know, I can't get the statistics about like what part of that is track 1 and what part of that is track 2. And granted, we have an older population in this province, but when I saw that number had increased 11% in a year, I got very scared. Because personally, I don't think we should have track 2 at all. When it became track 2, I did not support it anymore. Personally, when it was just track 1 and people's death was reasonably foreseeable and we could do nothing to help them. As someone who lived in a nursing home, I agreed with it because I saw people suffering and there was nothing we could do to end their suffering. But when you brought in track 2, I was like, no, I can no longer support this. And to me and to many other people, it is a form of genocide. And that is not cool.
Vicky, you've brought some wonderful points for us to reflect on and consider. And I do think a lot of what you mentioned just comes down to people with disabilities would like dignity.
Yeah, they say dignity to die. I'm like, what about the dignity to live?
Absolutely. Is there anything that we haven't touched on yet that you would like to add?
Just that I hope, and based on the conversations I've had around the table, the remedy, everybody around that table that I've spoken to who's helping implement it actually does have the best intentions, which I don't normally see in the government, but the people around that table do have the best intentions to make this the best it can possibly be, and I hope that it is a model for that it gets implemented the way they say, and that it's going to be a model for the other provinces if it's implemented properly. And pretty soon, all the institutions, I would hope, including nursing homes, close, because we don't treat our elders in nursing homes very well. And I can say that as somebody who lived in one for 10 years. Like, they're like, okay, let's get the young ones out. I'm like, that's great, but does that mean older people deserve to be treated like this too? No, they don't. No one deserves to be treated like this. Absolutely no one. And the people on the ground who are doing the care every day have the best intentions for the most part, but they are not given the resources to do their best work. I once had a CCA tell me, he's like, I want you to know that I know my care is subpar, and I'm sorry for that, but I'm doing the best I can. That was during the height of COVID.
Thank you very much, Vicky.
Thank you.
Would it be fair for me to extend the offer that if anyone watching this has any questions or would like to
Oh,
contact
of course, yeah, of course.
Okay.
Contact me. I sleep with my damn iPad, so I will get back. I will get back to them as soon as possible.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Vicky.
Thank you so much.